Hi, I'm Bryan Catherman. This is Robbie Tschorn. We are still working through Worship Matters by Bob Kauflin, the last chapter, 24. A lot of tension there on my part.
Yep.
I didn't like how the terminology was worded, and maybe we got derailed. So this time, I'm gonna direct this back towards you.
Sure.
The chapter is chapter 25, skilled and authentic. The tension there, I'm pretty sure skilled we understand. Does a person know how to play music, sing? I mean, put that stuff together. And I think based on the reading, authentic is referring to a heart that is true. Is this person authentically worshiping God, or is this inauthentic in a show? I kind of think that would be the way I understand what he's getting at. So let me ask you a question. So he says here, well, I'm going to read two things here. It starts on 195. It says, all the musical skill in the world won't substitute for a genuine heart of worship. So does that mean that we should focus on the heart and not the skill? Is that what he's getting at? Would we be better off to have a totally unskilled music leader who has a great heart?
Right. I think what he's getting at there is if you had to choose between the two, right, of, okay, do I want someone with all the skill in the world on stage but that doesn't have the heart, you would want the other person who has more heart than actual skill, because it's going to actually be something that's pleasing to the Lord.
So are you saying that skill's not important?
To answer that question, what he might be getting at, in that case, yes, maybe. But no, skill is important, because if you don't have skill, it's a distraction. Okay. That's one of the big things, I think, in the musical realm or musical part of a church service, that you could have unskilled individuals who may not actually have a true, I would say, calling to worship ministry, or as in musical worship in that context. So if I'm saying worship, that's what I'm getting at here. That they don't have the skill, but they have great hearts, but maybe they're not the individuals.
And you cringe.
Yeah. It's like,
could too much skill be distracting?
I think so. Yeah. Too much skill in the context, like, I think you could have. I don't think you can have too much skill. I think you can apply too much skill incorrectly.
Have you seen some of these videos where, like, there's a small band and the drummer goes totally berserk? And you're like, I can't not see the drummer not going nuts.
The drummer at the wrong gig or something.
Yeah.
Very
distracting. He says in here, God wants us to pursue both skill and heart.
Yes.
And then he likens it to the craftsmen who built the temple, which I really like that they were given the skill, they had the mind to do the job. Yeah. And he says everyone whose heart was stirred up in him came to do the work. Exodus 36, by the way.
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
So before, hopefully, maybe this might need to address it, but I'm a part of a worship cohort that's it's like several worship leaders that are speaking with a pretty well-known guy. I won't name drop or anything, but he's one of the individuals who's a part of this cohort. We were going around sharing, like, what our church environment looks like, what we do. And he just right out the gate, he's like, we don't have anyone else who's able, it's a smaller church, we don't have anyone else who's able to lead worship. I've stepped into the role.
Which this is super normal for lots and lots of churches.
And we're talking, this guy's in his early 60s, not much skill with, like, just playing music. I don't know how his singing, like, what that even sounds like. But he's doing what he can to make it work. He's actually a part of this cohort to try and learn and, like, grow in that area. And I mean, he even pulls in some outside, like, resources. I don't think it's YouTube per se, but, like, the main worship guy that we're working with, he has resources online that allow you to bring in, like, these multi-tracks and stuff like that,
right,
where you can have some, kind of fluff up what's going on, right? Or build up your sound and kind of maybe cover some.
So this guy's
sound.
Bringing that stuff in.
Yeah.
Where are we going with this guy?
Sorry. No. So the point of this, of saying that this guy, he's the only one that's there. He's the only one that can actually step into this role and actually fulfill the role, right? And I don't know if this church is actually pursuing someone else or trying to find someone else to bring in as far as, like, the musician side goes. But here in this case, you have this individual who, it sounds like he does have the right heart. He wants to worship the Lord. He wants to help the congregation worship the Lord. But as far as the skill side is what's lacking the most.
But he's stepping up into this.
But he's stepping up into it.
Best he can.
And so what I would say with this is, like, I'm seeing from him is this desire to grow in his skill, to increase in that regard.
And because he has the right heart.
Right, he has the right heart, yes.
Okay, let me ask you another.
All over the place on that one.
That's okay. So we've probably hit this a little bit. I'm going to skip over this. There's a paragraph in 196 just about what you see in churches that put too much emphasis in skill.
Yeah.
And then it goes on. So I want to actually, okay, what is the risk of putting too much focus on skill? What is the potential negatives if we focus too much on excellence? Mm-hmm. And obviously this is about tension, mm-hmm. so we want to find the right balance. But let's say we've swung the pendulum over to skill. We have the best musicians. It's great. Yeah. Maybe they're recording worship albums. Maybe everyone just goes, wow, look at the gifts God gave them. Look at this. Mm-hmm. These guys are really talented. What if we put too much emphasis on excellence?
I would say from the start, you have the potential to, like, you taking your worship team, your musical team, that there's so much emphasis on the skill side of it that over time that becomes what it's all about. There's no spiritual aspect to it. It's it's really just more about music production as opposed to doing anything from like a spiritual transformation. Like, okay, are they even like, is your own team even like growing closer to the Lord? And if they're not growing closer to the Lord, I mean, what are they pouring out into the congregation outside of just a good high quality of music?
So if we just went out and paid some symphony people to come in here and play music, you're saying that's actually worse than the guy who is got a really good heart and he loves Jesus. You're saying you'd rather have that guy than the best skilled symphony people who don't even know Jesus, who are not believers.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that could be an evangelistic outreach or something, having those skilled individuals come in, but I mean, especially here and I believe biblically, we hold that those who are on the platform on a Sunday morning, they hold the congregation holds them with a different eye, I would say. Like they see them like, okay, they're up there, like they examine your life. Are you, what does your life look like off the stage?
Follow me as
I follow Christ, right?
Okay, what's the danger if we put too little focus into skill and maybe too much focus on heart? Hey, this person has the best heart. Can't remember any of the words of the song. Sings off key constantly. You mentioned distraction. What are some other dangers if we make it about what is the danger of us not giving attention to excellence? What if they didn't give attention to excellence with building the temple? What's the danger there?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's to be very simple about it. I mean, it's just a biblical command. Like even looking at the Psalm, like it says to play with excellence. Like it's Psalm 33, if I'm not mistaken.
Or in preaching, show yourself a workman approved.
Show yourself a workman approved, yeah. And so, there's the call to actually be skilled at what you feel like the Lord's actually been called you to do. And so if you're going to build this temple, you need to do it with skill, right? If we're going to sing to the Lord on Sunday mornings, like our congregation needs to know that, okay, we're not winging it. We've come prepared.
Do you find that you can make it a worship act to improve your musical ability when you're practicing? Can that be an offering to God? I mean, maybe that's pretty cheeky, but how do you do that? I guess I'm assuming you do that.
Sure.
How do you envision that you're making a sacrifice and offering a worship to God?
I will be open in that's been a struggle for me, truthfully, in that it can almost feel like I am the worship leader here, but if I'm spending time practicing, it could feel like I'm taking away from other duties that I could be doing, whereas there actually has been a challenge to me to change, like kind of shift that focus of like, no, again, the skill piece, like growing in the skill. And I believe with that, in growing in skill, in growing, like taking time to practice, that is an act of worship, in that you are, okay, I mean, taking that Psalm 33, for example, okay, it says to, play with excellence, play with skill. Okay, I can't do that unless I'm practicing.
Unless you practice.
Yeah, exactly.
So the funny part about that is, I have this problem with preaching sometimes. Mm-hmm. I need to give the appropriate amount of time to prepare a sermon. That's not 40 hours a week.
Sure.
But, today is sermon prep day. But I should be discipling one person, or I should be doing this. And you forget that you're helping the entire congregation.
Yeah.
So that practice is actually serving the whole congregation. Yeah. And I think it's hard when people come thinking, I don't need to practice. I don't need to give attention to that. Because what they're really saying is,
it's not that important.
It's not that important. Or here's the real test. Mm. And I had to come to real grips with this in my life as a preacher. So I've preached before a very large crowd. At one point. Another time I preached at a church where their services go out on TV and have all these viewers, and that's rare, right? But big church versus then you come back from that and you're at some little church plant, or you're maybe at our little church. And then the question is, do I work harder for the church that has more people, or do I? Oh, this is a small group, so it doesn't matter. The test in our heart is that how we're treating God's people? If there's 100 of them here, and I'm only going to give them this, but if they were multiplied to 1,000, then I would take it seriously. Sure. That says I'm about man.
Yeah.
And so when I see that in my own heart, oh well, this is a really important sermon that I'm preaching to this larger crowd, opposed to this. You really have to put that in check. So I mean, I'd just throw that out to you, like, hey, would you practice if you were playing in front of 1,000 people versus 100 people?
No, yeah, that's really good. Actually, the conference that I did 2 years ago, that you invited me to go and lead worship for. It was kind of like in that same regard, but that's a good question. It's like, can you do the same thing for 12 or 12,000?
Right. I think it's Howard Hendricks says, I don't care. He's talking about discipleship. I don't care what you do with 120. I want to see what you can do with 12.
Yeah.
Because it's harder, I think, to really pour into that.
I think a temptation with that is that, okay, it's a more intimate setting. There's more grace there. So if you're messing up or if something happens or whatever, but yeah, maybe there is more grace there, but you should still put in that amount of effort, that quality that you would, it's not.
I remember early in my preaching ministry, I was asked to go speak at an event. It was a healing event for women who in their past had abortions. And then they wanted to actually, so what part of this event, they were doing a funeral or a memorial, so to speak, of those kids. And it was really healthy and really good for them. I thought that I was going to come and do almost a devotional type of thing. I didn't really put a ton of effort into it. And it turns out it was like a funeral. It was like really set up. And I felt so ashamed of myself for not taking their need more seriously. These women were really there to hear from the Word of God, to pour out their heart, and just in that worship act to be. And I wasn't flippant about it, but I'm like, oh well, it's only a couple of people. But in fact, to them, it was as serious as if I was doing a very serious funeral. And I just decided, man, I can't ever let myself do that again.
Wow.
Repented, apologized before the Lord. Just thought, if I'm asked to do a funeral it's funny how that comes full circle, because we did a memorial for our son, and it was just us, a couple family members, and the person who officiated it and put the ashes in the ground, mixed it, and put in this. He took it very seriously, and it was powerful. And I just realized that's really important. Wow, it's not a flippant act. It's not it was the most important thing he had that week.
Wow. And
it meant everything to me. And so I think when you don't know who's walking in and is going to worship the Lord and hear these lyrics and sing and cry. Maybe that's the time they meet God for the first time they get saved.
Yeah.
Maybe they're coming in on something super horrible and they needed that. And then we just don't practice. We don't give it the attention. At the same time, whoa. Right? Skill and heart, giving our best, shooting for excellence, but not making it all about excellence.
Right.
And not making it all about heart.
No.
Balance in those, right?
Yeah.
Anything you want to hit in this chapter that really just you underlined, it struck out, it just was there for you?
On the skill side of things, on the bottom of page 196, it says, in corporate worship, then skill and excellence are functional. They have more to do with edification and encouragement than musical standards. I want to be the very best I can be so I can serve others more effectively for God's glory. So he's tying in why we do what we do.
Kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, how about this? I forgot about this one. That was at the bottom and top. So it's bottom of 198, top of 199. But he's just talking about making it really clear as the church grows. You need to have room for new members and their skills. So how do you, we have a music team. We have people. How do you communicate to them that if someone else comes in, there needs to be room for another bass player, another piano player, another drummer, another guy in the booth? How do you keep from having this is my position, ministry? And what if somebody really skilled comes in?
Yeah.
what if God's calling another, we do have plurality of elders, and what if the other elder's a really solid preacher? Am I going to be ready to give up the pulpit more?
Sure. Yeah.
Right? How do we communicate that to people? I don't know if you've thought much about that, but
Yeah, no. I would say that in preparation for something like that, because I would almost argue that it seems like that should be an expectation, because that someone would come along and outperform, whatever you want to say, but like
outskill me.
outskill
Yeah.
you, yeah, you know. And with that, and hopefully with that expectation that you would create like a ethos amongst, like, just speaking specifically to the music team or worship team with the AV guys, you know, platform musicians. That you're creating this ethos of like, okay, it's not about me. This isn't my gig. This isn't my ministry. I've heard of one person who was let go from their worship team, and they approached their worship pastor and said, you took away my ministry from me, you know, because I can't do X anymore, you know,
Right.
play a certain instrument or whatever. And it's not our ministry. I mean, it's something that's been given to us to handle well. It's Christ's ministry ultimately. I love how you phrase that often. And so I guess to come back around to that, like, just creating that awareness from the get-go that it's not about me. This isn't my thing, right? I'm not the guitarist and forever will be. No, like, I need to have that expectation, and we need to, as worship leaders, I would say, like, help our folks see that, yeah, I mean, hopefully God's bringing more skilled musicians. God's going to bring other individuals who are far more talented, and try to foster a sense of humility in that, you know.
It's a tough deal. But
Yeah.
This is Christ's ministry. I get to be a part as a way to think about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if we have the right heart, we're thinking about the people and how these other skills help. And hopefully, we'd have some rotation and team camaraderie.
For sure.
And,
yeah. Rotations are helpful.
all right. So on the spectrum, and we'll maybe just end with this question: which way do you feel like you naturally lean one way and you have to work toward the other, or vice versa?
Oh man.
You know, where do you feel like you could use a little more effort to bring more balance to this tension?
I'd say it comes in seasons. Like, there are a lot of times where I can get puffed up and feel very skilled and very talented. Then other seasons where it's like, man, I suck. I need to.
So for you, this is a pendulum thing.
Yeah,
going back
for
and
sure.
forth.
It's not. Yeah, but because I'm not trying to like sound hyper spiritual here, but there's always a desire to grow more on the heart side of things and be more. What's the word you use as well? Authentic.
You use authentic. I just
Authentic.
authentically true in my worship.
Yeah, true. You know, pure. I would even throw out there. So I would say it definitely swings, but I want both sides to increase. At this point in the pendulum, I really want. I don't know. I want my worship and the worship of our church to just be super, like,
you want to lock it in.
Yeah, I want to lock it in.
Dial it right.
And then
in
the
middle.
skill side of it, you know, I want that to grow as well. I actually just came across a guitarist the other day on YouTube, and it's just like, this guy's younger than me, and he's just killing it. I'm like, man, I've got some work to do, you know.
Well, it's good that you have the heart for shooting for both, and I think that's the point.
Sure.
In finding that healthy balance in the tension. Well, thanks. This has been really helpful. The book is Worship Matters by Bob Kauflin. That was chapter 25. We hope this has been beneficial to you.